Alright. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on? So for the first video on this channel, this is something I want to do. I've had this for a while now. I have the complete Barnes& and Noble collection of all of Lovecraft's work. This isn't everything he ever wrote, but it's a pretty fucking good collection. It's got all the essentials as well as an introduction by the Lovecraft scholar S.T. Joshi, and it's very good. It's very good. I'm flipping through it. I'm not even halfway done with it yet, but it's proving to be very, very good. So one thing I thought I would do is I would go through every single story over the count of whenever I feel like it, and pretty much just kind of do a review. And the brilliant thing about Lovecraft is all of his work is public domain now. All you have to do if you want to read Lovecraft is search for his story online, and it pops up on the website dedicated to him. Lovecraft himself is a terribly underrated author. It is insanely, it's insane how underrated this guy is. I don't know how he isn't considered among the greatest of all time. He really is. And I think there's a lot that could go into that. Well, stuff that I don't really feel like getting into here. That's a whole other conversation regarding Lovecraft. But sticking to just his work, I feel like I don't know how you cannot say he's one of the greatest of all time. I feel like if you're going to make that claim, you have to just kind of say, you have to do vague criticisms of his work and then shit on him personally. I feel like that's the only way you can possibly do it. But I think if you actually dissect his work, it does have an amount of consistency, but there was nothing like it at the time. And obviously he had some influences from Poe and some other people that are seeing a lot of his early work before he really ran with his idea and cemented himself as the founder of Lovecraftian horror. So that obviously came later in his career, but the roots of it are still shown early. The story that I'm covering is his first one ever. Okay, it's called The Beast in the Cave. It wasn't his first published effort. If you do a search for his first story, the Alchemist shows up, which is actually the second story in this book. But the first one he wrote was this one. He wrote this in 1904, and it was finished in 1905, okay? Lovecraft himself was born in 1890, okay? That makes this man 14 years old when he wrote this. And it reads like a lot of his later work. He had a grasp of his writing style at 14 years old, which that is insane. I've read work from a college level and beyond that is not as good as this 3-page story right here. It really is incredible how well this one in particular holds up because he was 14 years old. Like, this actually isn't even his worst story. And he wrote this when he was 14. And that's 14 with no first-hand experiences in caves, according to the introduction by Joshi here. He gives a little snippet. So that alone is just incredible. And so turning to the story itself, the one thing that I like to actually look at is openings, because if you at all write, you know how important openings are. Like, you're the first sentence in particular is insanely important, or at least the first few. Okay. So let's talk about the way Lovecraft opens this. It reads here, "The horrible conclusion which had been gradually obtruding itself upon my confused and reluctant mind was now an awful certainty. I was lost, completely, hopelessly lost in the vast labyrinthine recesses of the Mammoth Cave." Okay? It's not about what's there, it's about what's not there. Okay? Lovecraft chooses to drop you in right where the narrator realizes that he's lost in Mammoth Cave. Okay? A big theme of the story is a sense of isolation. We'll kind of get into that later on as well. It's the isolation of this narrator being in the cave, completely alone, with not a lot of knowledge. Okay, so how does this opening kind of mirror that sense of isolation? Because we don't get anything but that. Okay, we don't get the setup. We know we're in Mammoth Cave, Kentucky. That's about it. We know that he's in the Mammoth Cave, lost. That's it. And of course, we do learn more about why he's lost, but like we don't get a whole lot of answers. We all we get is that the narrator says that he separated himself from the rest of the group with no one else really knowing. That's all we pretty much get. We don't really get we don't get like a big size of the group. We don't get a gender on the guide until the end. If you know Lovecraft, you probably could guess that. But like you're dropped into this with no sense of what's going on other than the isolation of the cave itself. Okay? No intro, no other characters, nothing like that. This man is completely isolated, and you're isolated with him because you don't know how he got there. Okay? So basically, at the beginning of the story, it's a lot of description, some of which we'll get into later. Spoilers throughout, by the way. The first main problem is that, well, he's discussing his possible starvation and the fact that he could go mad, and other people have in the cave. But the first real problem is that his torch is starting to fade out. Okay, so his torch starts to fade out, and so he's realizing that his time is pretty much numbered. So the thing he decides to do about that is he starts to like kind of scream and call out, okay? And this is where I would like to say that the isolation is further exemplified, okay? So his torch is fading, so he can't see. Like his senses are leaving him. His eyes can't see anything. The use of sound doesn't help him because the only one that can hear him in that moment when he's calling is himself. So it's literally just him, and his senses are kind of fading, and he's isolated. However, that changes when he can start to hear footsteps approaching him in the cave. Okay? And then, once the footsteps come, we get a very good line. I will read lines as I see that they're good. We get a very, very good line when he realizes what's happening. Okay? And the line reads, let's see if I can find it on this. Torch begun to expire. I'm just ranting, boys. I'm sorry. Is this the line? Yeah, here it is. I'll highlight it for you guys. Let me highlight the whole thing. Here we go. This line right here. It reads, whilst these joyous queries arose in my brain, I was on the point of renewing my cries in order that my discovery might come sooner, when the instant my delight was turned to horror as I listened, for my ever-acute ear, now sharpened in even greater degree by the complete silence of the cave, bore to my benumbed understanding the unexpected and dreadful knowledge that these footfalls were not like those of any mortal man. So the footsteps are approaching him, and then he gives this line. Okay, so this line gives us kind of a roller coaster sandwich of kind of phrases and emotions here. That's why this line is so good. We go from the narrator is hearing the footsteps, so he's happy and joyful, okay, and he's calling out to this what he hopes is a person to come and rescue him, and however it goes down when he discovers that with his hypersensitive ears, because an impact of the isolation of the cave is that his ears have become kind of hypersensitive to the sounds within the cave. Okay, he's not hearing anything helpful. He's just hearing the cave itself. So the ears can only hear the things in the cave, if you will. But that's just the adding to the isolation. So the ears hearing sharpened by the hyper silence of the cave, and it ends with the revelation that these footsteps are not human. Okay, so boom with the joy down. You get the ears are hypersensitive. That's up. You can hear things better, but you can't hear anything because it's the cave. We get a roller coaster of ups and downs through this one sentence, and I think this is just extremely well written, and that's a very very solid line. Okay, and so the reason that we don't think that this is a human is that the intervals at which the steps are occurring is not of a biped. It's not of a bipedal creature. He's hearing. He compares it to a mountain lion or a feline. He's hearing intervals of 4 within the cave. So that's why we don't think it is. That's why we know it's not a full human that's attacking him. So the isolation is then reinstated again down here through another line. I gotta find it first. Here it is. Okay. This is another line I really like. Okay. So here's the isolation. So accordingly, I became very quiet in the hope that the unknown beast would have, in the absence of a guiding sound, lose its direction, as had I, and thus pass me by. But this hope is not destined for realization, for the strange footballs steadily advanced, the animal evidently having obtained my scent, which in the atmosphere so absolutely free from all distracting influences as is that of the cave, could doubtless be followed at great distance. Okay, what's with everything, within every interaction that Lovecraft is, Lovecraft's narrator, of course, is having with this monster, the thing that's following him, the cave is getting more and more descriptive. Like, we learned that his ears are hypersensitive, and that we also learn here that applies to smell. The cave is its own entity, isolated from everything else in the world, much like the narrator and this thing themselves are isolated inside the confines of the cave. The cave is just the cave, and when you're in the cave, it's just the cave. That's all that's there. So once a scent is in the cave, the senses of everything within the cave, including the hearing and the smelling, the only thing this wouldn't apply to is the seeing, because you can't see anything. So the creature can follow him at great distance because of the fact that every other smell is not present within the cave. So that's what we're getting from that line right there. And of course, it's just a really good line with lots of good word choices and good language choices. It's doing a lot for plot and for setting, and that's just the genius of that line right there. It's this kid was 14, guys. So basically, we'll kind of speed up just a little bit. So basically, he starts imagining the worst of the creature because he can't see it due to the fact his torch is gone. And so what happens is he grabs some rocks, okay, and then he notes a sense of fatigue within the creature, okay. He notes a sense of fatigue, which is the first kind of human thing that the creature does, which upon him seeing that sense of weakness in the creature, the labored breathing of the animal, there it is. The labor breathing, whatever is in front of him is fatigued. So he takes that time to hurl 2 rocks at the thing, which is enough to wound it, okay? And after he wounds it, he sprints out and actually finds the guide, and then they go back to check out what it was after he tells the story. So we kind of get some descriptives. It's a thin white hair, and then we find out that it was actually intermingling between 2 and 4 legs, something that you can actually pick up on within the story. If you read it carefully, which we'll talk about the foreshadowing in a second. And then he adds to the isolation that every deformity this creature has is because it stayed within the cave too long. Unearthly whiteness, blah, 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 blah. Where is it? There it is. Its hair was snow white, a thing due to no doubt the bleaching action of the long existence within the inky confines of the cave. Every kind of deformity the creature has is being written off by the isolation within the cave. Okay, and then the thing that makes the guide not actually shoot it when he gets to it is the fact that it makes a sound right here. Okay, the sound of a nature difficult to describe. That phrase would go on to like influence Lovecraft much more. The roots of his cosmic horror are already present within this piece. He's just applying them to the other more traditional aspects of the genre right now. And so the thing at the end is that it's revealed, if you haven't picked up on it, that this creature is actually a man. Okay? And so if you go back and upon further rereading, the foreshadowing of that is actually revealed quite early on, when Lovecraft slips in certain lines about I knew had gone mad under circumstances such as these, but I felt that this end would not be mine. Okay? So like he talks about some people in other situations that had gone mad. That's the first thing. The second thing is you can actually pick up on the bipedal nature of the creature. It discusses it's bolded, so I should be able to find it in here. He notes a lack of unison between the patterns of its. Here it is. Most of the time, the tread seemed to be that of a quadruped, walking with singular lack of unison between the hind and forefeet. Yet at brief and infrequent intervals, I fancied that the 2 feet were engaged in the process of locomotion. So it's not even like he's hiding that. So, as his hypersensitive hearing from the cave is detecting that at sometimes this creature is walking on 4 and 2, which all people have the capabilities to actually do. And the other big one is actually a line. And I have to fucking highlight that. I'll find it. Lack of unison. I will find it, bro. Okay, but I'll read it. I have it written down here. I wondered what situation, bubble. Here it is. I wondered what species the animal was to confront me. It must, I thought, be some unfortunate beast who had paid for its curiosity to investigate one of the entrances of the fearful grotto with a lifelong confinement in its interminable recesses. This is the line right here. What species of animal was to confront him? It must be some unfortunate beast who had paid for its curiosity to investigate one of the entrances of the fearful grotto with a lifelong confinement in its interminable recesses. That is what the narrator is in line for, due to his investigating one of the entrances to the fearful grotto with a lifelong confinement. That's what he's setting himself up for. Because he left the guide group, he is the unfortunate beast that is paying for his curiosity, and he is in fact a man. So, by this line here further links the narrator to what the thing chasing him actually is. So, that's kind of the foreshadowing of the fact that the thing actually chasing him is, in fact, a man. So, that's kind of all that there is to say about this one. It's a very good story written by a 14-year-old, and I think that is the biggest takeaway from this, is like how much of a prodigy this guy was. He cranked this out before he was 15. And, like, it's pretty incredible that he was able to do that. It was a sign of much greater work to be followed in the rest of his career. But even on this, even the fact that this one still holds up and is still objectively better than things like Herbert West Reanimator and some of his other, I don't want to say smaller, just because something small doesn't mean it's bad, but it holds up then better than a lot of some of his earlier work, when it feels like he was just going on a description tour of some of the places that were in his mind, because that's what some of his early work kind of is, or some of his overtly more racist stuff. But so, like, this is not even his worst story, and it's like not even close. So that's all I have to say about this one, which it's a strong start. It's a strong start to a career that would go on to be very, very influential. And I don't know what more can you say about that at 14. I at 14 wasn't cranking out like stuff nearly this good. It feels like Lovecraft just like he didn't have to write the first 100,000 words of garbage that the rest of us have to write. He just had such a mastery of the craft right away, which is that's the sign of any prodigy right there. Okay, lads, that's all I gotta say. I'm getting the hell out of here. I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's not like the most well known kind of thing to start with, but it. I don't know. What'd you guys think? Did I tackle this all right? Did I do a good job? I think I'm okay at this. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think.